Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. We're talking handshakes and slaps. We're going to talk NFL, USFL, a little NASCAR, and maybe other things as well. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up to me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast presented by Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Live. Every Sunday at 8 p.m., join Kevin Wilson and myself as we break down all the latest and greatest news and information for fantasy baseball this season. This Sunday, we'll be talking ranking the first baseman and third baseman. Last week, we talked about the starting pitcher, so you can go back and listen to that on the Belly Up Fantasy Live, Baseball Live, podcast. But you can catch us live on Sundays as well. Happy Friday. Dad, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Good. Glad to be back. And, doing great. Big week. I know we're talking probably a little bit of hockey, big week in Nashville, but a lot going on. So,
we might get to some hockey tonight. We don't always talk hockey, but when we have to, we do. But nonetheless, we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. Big basketball weekend as the regular season is winding down in the NCAA here pretty soon. I know the team that I cover and follow, Eastern Kentucky, their final game will be Saturday in the regular season before they get into the ASUN Conference Tournament. Coming off another tough loss on Wednesday evening. The guys did. The girls play on Thursday. But nonetheless, let's talk some college basketball. I covered it on the Monday episode by myself a little bit, but I want to get your thoughts. Jamon Howard, coach guard from Wisconsin, coming through the handshake line. Jamon Howard seemed to be upset about a timeout, even though he was pressing and the game was over. But then guard put his hands on Howard, which Howard didn't seem to like. And then they had words. The next thing you know, the assistant coach is standing there. Jamon Howard reaches over, slaps him in the side of the head, getting a 5-game suspension through the rest of the regular season. What were your thoughts when you first saw the whole instance take place?
well, I mean, I always hate to see that. I remember years ago when it seemed like there was a lot more of that type of stuff. Fights went on, and they've kind of stopped that, which was good in the NCAA. It's sad when a coach gets involved in that because then anything can really happen. Players can get upset, and usually the coaches or the adults are the ones that kind of separate everybody and calm everybody down. But once you get a coach involved, then you got players sticking up for their coach. It can escalate real quickly. And of course, he has a little bit of history in this. So I think that's why, a suspension and things like that came up. But, the coach has got to rise above that, and for the coaches to start that. And I don't think it was anywhere near a good enough reason from there. When you're losing, you just have to take that, and that's the way it is. Don't be 15 points down, and that doesn't happen. And I've seen coaches protect players, felt like players have gotten hurt, things like that, but that wasn't what this was.
No, and if he was going to press, I don't understand how you can be upset about a timeout. I don't get the mindset of saying, well, yeah, we're allowed to still play hard, but you just need to let it go. And if we score a couple more points, then so be it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's not the first dust up that Jamon Howard has had either. He had issues last year. I think it was against Maryland where he was yelling at a player and just things that didn't make a whole lot of sense there either. But he'll miss the rest of the regular season, which really isn't that big of a deal. But it is 5 games. And do you think that 5 games was sufficient suspension for Jamon Howard?
Yes, I think so for this. I think a suspension was good. But again, this is his second offense. So I think next time it could be a lot different if it comes up again. But no, I think that's sufficient for what happened and the way it was there.
I talked to one Michigan fan. He said I'd be okay if they fired him. I thought, well, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. I mean, it's bad. Don't get me wrong. I shared my opinions about adults acting like children on Monday's episode. People can go back and listen to that if they'd like on the podcast. But, I never thought this was necessarily a fireable offense. Now, if it was a low-tier college and a no-name coach, maybe so. But he's Juwan Howard. He's at Michigan. He's part of the Fab Five. They're not firing him over this. Now, if he does it again, sure. But nonetheless, I thought it was strange. I thought it was strange how it all went down. I thought it was strange how Juwan Howard he didn't seem to own it. He kind of was making excuses about it. And I didn't hear, and maybe this is on me for not reading more, why he actually hit the assistant coach. I mean, I didn't see anything about him saying he said something about my mama or something like that, right? I mean, I'm not sure what caused the hit.
Well, I mean, from what you have, it's this thing that goes on today, and it happens with kids a lot. You wouldn't think it would with adults, but from what I understand, the deal was, hey, somebody touch me. You don't touch me. Okay, well, I mean, I've heard that. I've been around that a lot, and that's kind of an excuse for losing your temper. But it's kind of like his deal was, hey, once somebody touched me, then that was over the line, and I'm not going to take that. And again, I mean, if he'd gotten shoved, if he'd gotten hit, that would be different. But I think it's not uncommon when you talk to a person and they're upset, you want to get their attention to just put your hand out and say, now, hey, wait just a minute. And sometimes you do touch them. But I don't think he was shoved first. But everything I've read, that's all that, that's the excuse he would give, saying, hey, boy, once somebody touched me, then it's a different deal, different game.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is the guy he hit's not the guy that touched him. And, none of it made sense. And I'm not sure where. I don't know. I've not been pleased with what I've heard come out of Juwan Howard's mouth about it. And I've heard some people try to defend him. And the deal is no, you can't defend hitting somebody. There's no defense for it. 5 games into the regular season. I would have liked to have seen at least one conference tournament game where he was suspended, but they chose not to do that. And I can live with that as well. Just a crazy all around thing. Now, some of the conversation came around of we need to just eliminate the handshake line from college basketball. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the handshake has been a good thing, and it's in a lot of other sports, and I don't think there's any reason why it shouldn't work. I think it helps a little bit keep sports in the proper perspective. Games can obviously be very competitive. There can even be physical disagreements with players during the game. But to be able to have the handshake line, sports have done that. I was surprised. I didn't know until I was in a hockey playoffs that, the hockey teams, at the end of every playoff series, and boy, hockey's a very, very physical sport. At the end of every series, there's a handshake line, and I've been privileged to see 2 or 3 of them. And even though there were players there that didn't like each other, there was no problems with that. That's just part of sportsmanship and the way it goes. I was thinking about that today. The NFL doesn't have a handshake line, but when the game is over, you see a majority of the players talking to each other. On the field, on the center of the field. Very rarely is there an incident. I think at every game in the NFL, the television networks, they choose not to show this, but there are players and staff members on both teams that meet at the center of the field and pray together. And, in NFL, a very physical sport, but at the end of the game, they realize, hey, it's a game and the game's over with now and we're going to move on. And I think that's what helps with the handshake line. Now, in all fairness, in basketball, it does happen very quickly right after the end of the game. But again, I think when you get in some of these arenas, in a basketball arena, you almost have to do it that way, especially if you got this rushing to court and stuff like that. I don't think you'd have the time. In hockey, you have a few minutes before they set up the handshake line, or they skate through there. And of course, football, there's a little bit of time there where the basketball thing does happen quick. But I mean, I think any kind of show of sportsmanship is a good thing, and I don't think it should be a problem.
Yeah, I think football is probably the best example because they do it after every game. The head coaches come out, meet, shake hands. Usually the quarterbacks do as well. And then, of course, there's a bunch of players out there. But it's the deal. The cameras are on the coach's handshake and the quarterback's handshake. And if there is an instance, it's news. Anytime that there's been a coach who's kind of shoved off the handshake or ignored it, it's become news. It's a big deal. And so I think that's probably the best example that's there. Hockey, like you said, it's at the end of the playoff series. This is a regular season basketball game we're talking about. And it wasn't like a buzzer beater or a controversial officials call at the end. It was game was over. Yeah. and still issues and just no excuse for it. Tom Izzo doesn't think they need to get rid of the handshake lines either. We'll agree with Tom Izzo on this one. It shouldn't be that difficult to shake a hand, even if you're upset, even if the coach says something about it. You can just say, listen, we're not talking about this right now. It seems like, from everything that I can see, Juwan Howard and Guard have a decent relationship. There's, video of them in the past talking, hugging, laughing, those kinds of things. So it's not like they have a storied history of hatred towards one another. I don't know. It's just a really weird situation and a sad situation, especially when you're talking about the coach getting involved in that kind of thing. It's crazy to see in our current day and time. Other college basketball stuff, we are getting close to the tournament time. Conference tournaments are starting soon. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the Final Four. We're still a ways out. We don't have brackets or anything yet, but top four right now is Gonzaga, Arizona, Auburn, and Purdue. Let's start with this question, Dad. Of those four teams, how many of those four do you think will be in the Final Four?
I think right now I would pick three of those to do that. I think, again, like I mentioned, I think on last show, I think your top 10, 12 teams, right now, any of those probably could. But, yeah, I would think Arizona, Gonzaga, and Purdue would definitely – that's who I would think is in it, along with Kentucky.
Wow. Okay. So I think I'd probably say two of those four make it through. I don't trust Gonzaga this year. I don't like what they've done. They've won games that they're supposed to win for sure. They dominated St. Mary's, but they don't play anybody. They don't. Their whole season is just a bunch of nobodies, and I feel like tournament time comes and that hurts Gonzaga in the long run. I'm looking through their schedule. They got beat by Alabama in December. Let's see here. They beat Texas Tech, who was ranked. They beat Texas, who was ranked. And then outside of that, and UCLA. They beat UCLA as well. All early games in the season. Here in the latter part of the year, St. Mary's is the only team that's ranked that they played, and they beat them. Yeah, they dominated them, but is St. Mary's that good? I don't trust Gonzaga. Purdue's the team I trust the most out of those top four. But I would say two of those four. I don't trust Auburn. They got a good squad, but I don't think they're as good as their record either. So I'm going to say two of those four. Probably Purdue and Arizona are the two I would think, but could be Purdue and Gonzaga or Arizona and Gonzaga, I guess, as well. Kentucky's good. No matter what happens in the SEC tournament, no matter how they finish out their year, they have the roster that could beat anybody. Now, will they? That's still the big question mark, right? But they have the roster. They have the makeup of veterans, bigs, shooters, defenders. They've got it all. Will they contribute as well? Do you have a long shot that maybe top 25 team already, but maybe
I looked at teams that are not in the top 10. that I think could make a run at it. And again, of course, I'm an Illinois fan, but I think Illinois, Wisconsin, and Arkansas are all teams you would have to keep an eye on that are out of the top 10 right now. Again, based on they've played some good teams and seem to be playing well here at the end of the season.
Yeah, I like Arkansas as well. UCLA is a team. They have a lot of experience. Yeah. And they were good last year, of course, as well. So that's a team you have to be concerned about, be worried about. What about Murray State? They're down there at number 19 right now, 2-loss team. Again, they don't play a lot of great opponents and their conference either. But any thoughts? Do you think Murray State can maybe be that Cinderella team this year?
Well, I mean, they definitely would be one of the better Cinderella teams because they are good every year, and it seems like they're good again this year. A lot of that's going to depend on where the bracket falls and what they've got there. If they can get in a bracket where they can win and the ranked team above them gets upset, then all of a sudden, yeah, they make a move. So I'm interested, too, in the brackets when we talk about the top 4 teams. A lot of times, you usually just have one team out west, and they're going to get in the Western bracket. This time with Arizona and Gonzaga, somebody's going to move out of the West more than likely if they're in the top 4, and that could make it interesting, and that could make it tough for Gonzaga, as you said. Let's say Arizona is the higher-ranked team and gets in the West. All of a sudden, Gonzaga is in the South or the East. That could be a lot different.
Yeah, it could be. But conference tournament time for Arizona, they're not guaranteed to be in that top 4. Right. Who do you think, if you had to make your decision, your choice for Final 4, who would those 4 be? I think you said Gonzaga, Arizona, Purdue. No, who did you say?
Yeah. Arizona, Gonzaga, Purdue, and Kentucky.
Okay. I think right now I would lean towards Purdue, Arizona, Kentucky, UCLA, and Arkansas. I like that Arkansas team. But you got teams like Villanova and Duke that are going to be good in the tournament.
Yes.
Coach K. All right, let's go conspiracy theory, Dad. Coach K is in his final season as head basketball coach at Duke. He is one of the most respected basketball coaches in all of college basketball. He's probably considered a top 3 all-time college basketball coach, I would guess. John Wooden, I think, would be number 1. I'm sure there's, Dean Smith, I'm sure, is up there. Maybe Coach K is number 2. Well, let's go there first. Where do you put Coach K in the list of all-time college basketball coaches?
Well, I mean, yeah, he's definitely one of the top ones. I do think, John Wooden is at the top there. Then, you're going to have 3 or 4, iconic names. You mentioned some of them there. I know he had controversy at the end, but Bob Knight is going to be a guy that's going to be mentioned in there. Yeah, and of course, you go back a little further, then you get into Iba and Rupp, but those are, those are a little older from there. So, Coach K is going to go down by far as one of the guys who, a great coach. He had Olympic success. He, of course, was a great recruiter, and I think, was good for college basketball. So,
yeah, I agree. So now let's get back to the conspiracy theory. I like conspiracy theories. Coach K, final year as a head basketball coach in the tournament, close game. What's the chances the refs lean towards Coach K a little bit in the tournament?
Well, I don't know. Officials, things happen so quick. I've never been, totally guaranteed that officials have time to think about all of that. There are makeup calls, obviously, when they miss a call or something like that. I think the thing to look at more would be the NCAA and the pairings and the brackets. Coach K has always held sway with those kind of things. And I can't see them putting him in a tough bracket. It would be good for them, for Coach K to go a ways and to be able to promote it. And I think that's where you might see some monkey business, would be just in what their bracket looks like.
That's a great point. You could have the Duke bracket with an interesting selection of teams around them. That's a good point. I'll tell you though, officials, they make decisions ahead of time where they're going to hold the whistle. They're going to call that block a charge every time when it goes for a certain team. There's things that they do consciously, as well as things that are happening in the moment. You just make the decision and go with it. But that's going to be a conspiracy until Coach K is out. There's going to be from day one, when they're a 2 seed, and the rest of the bracket looks horrible. Whatever it is, maybe they're even a 1 seed if they win out the ACC and one of these Arizona, Auburn, Purdue teams loses. Maybe Duke jumps in as the 1 seed, and everything gets fun from there as well. The Blue Bloods, Dad, you've got Kansas at 5, Kentucky at 6, Duke at 7. They're all right there. They're all back in it, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah, they are. You're going to have a lot of big names, traditional people there. Then you get into a little bit of teams that maybe aren't as traditional with Texas Tech and Baylor. But no, and you got Villanova, again, who has been good and will be good this year. And of course, you got, Blue Bloods, you got UCLA's name they are back in it. And, yeah, I think you go to the top 12, 15 teams and it'll be real good. I mean, I think your 1, 2, and 3 seeds should all be really strong.
Yeah, and we learn a lot about these teams come conference tournament time. I think about Kentucky had LSU on Wednesday night, Arkansas on Saturday, Ole Miss Tuesday, and Florida next Saturday before going into conference tournament play. So most teams are down to 3 to 5 games. By the time this episode airs, probably down to 2 to 3 games. But we see a lot of who these teams are come conference tournament time, and should be exciting. I can't believe we're almost to March Madness already. Kind of blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, let's transition now out of college basketball. Let's talk NHL, Dad. I want to make sure we have the time to do this. We'll give you a 60-second clip of whatever you want to talk about. Nashville's hosting the Stadium Series game where they will be playing outside in the Titans' home stadium. Nashville's a great place, an entertaining place. The Predators are an entertaining team. What excites you about the Predators and specifically this game? I believe it's on Saturday, correct?
Yes. Well, just knowing about the fan base and living there and being a part of it, Nashville has really quite grown the fan base, and the city has embraced it. The country music industry has embraced it. The stars that live in Nashville, which many people, media people and everything, they do. And, of course, with the stadium, they're going to be able to accommodate a lot of people. I know Nashville will kind of really roll out the red carpet. They've got big entertainers going to be involved in the intermission, all that. And they've been building this up for a while. This is a big week, too. On Thursday night, they're going to retire the first jersey they've ever retired, which is Pecorine. I read where he's got 50 folks from Finland coming over for this. And the city, he's by far the most popular Predator there's ever been. So there's already going to be a lot of buildup early in the week, and then heading toward the game. And it's an evening game. I think that'll be good. I was looking a little bit at the weather. It could be a pretty cool day on Saturday. I think the high of 47 and low of 29, and of course the game's at night. So I know they're working on making ice this week at night when the sun's not shining. But I think Nashville just very excited. They've really embraced the Predators. The Predators have been surprisingly good this year. Hopefully it'll be a good hockey game and the Predators can do well. It'd be interesting. They haven't played in this outdoor setting before. And I think there'll be a lot of excitement, but I was thinking it's got to be a lot different playing hockey outdoors in the stadium as far as just the fans and the closeness compared to a place like Bridgestone Arena. That's just a very loud, crazy place there. And again, there'll be a lot of pageantry and stuff before the game. But when you get down to it, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if there's as much energy to feed off of as there is normally. But they have good players, and I think they'll do well.
Yeah, you're right. It will be different as far as the noise and the closeness, the intimacy of it all. But we've been in that Titans stadium for several times. We were there. I think back to that Titans comeback win over the Giants that we were at. It was a Monday night game, I think. And it got pretty loud. There's still going to be noise. And I think the energy level is going to be through the roof there, especially if the game's close, of course, as well. I got a question about this, Dad. The Predators have always kind of leaned towards the goalie as far as the fan support goes. I'd say early on, maybe Mike Dunham was the goalie, maybe not as much with him, but Vokun, Pecorine, now Juice, Soros, Soros. I mean, it seems like the Predators fan base have always rallied around their goalie.
Yes, and I mean, part of it is, historically, the goalie has been one of the best players in Nashville. They have had some couple, individual stars, and they have some good players now with Forsberg and Duchesne and Yossi. But the goalies have been, you're right. The fans have always kind of attached themselves to them, and they've had the personality and stuff. It's funny, even though, some of them, I guess all those guys are from, European countries. Yeah. But, Vokun was just very, very popular. And Rene, I really connected with them. And, of course, Soros has now. So, again, I haven't been involved in another hockey city, but I think a lot of times that probably is true. The goalie, there are goalies that are big names. And, of course, when you look back at some of the ones, I know they have been with Dominic Hasek and Martin Brodeur. Those were ones that, the fans, it was the biggest name on those teams. And the Predators have been blessed to have good goalies. They've got some more in the pipeline now. And, you're right about that.
Yeah, I just feel like, when the Blackhawks were good, when I was a kid, back in Jeremy Roenick, Chelios days, you heard more about them than the goalie. The Red Wings, when they had their dynasty, yes, they had good goalies, but, you heard about the Yzermans and all the other the guys that were out there. I don't know. For me, it seemed like there are definitely teams, like you said, those names you mentioned for sure. Those fan bases love those goalies. Patrick Waugh was another one of those guys. But yeah, it's we always enjoyed going to Nashville games. So neither one of us have been in many years, but nonetheless, it was a good time. And excited to see how that game turns out there in Nashville. Smashville, I guess, for Saturday. Let's transition quickly to the NFL. Couple quick thoughts there. Brian Flores gets a job. He's going to be an assistant with the Pittsburgh Steelers, suing the league. We've talked about that already, so we won't go back to that a whole lot. Are you surprised he got a job this year?
I hadn't thought about him, being willing to be an assistant coach, but I think where he went in the situation he is, I wasn't shocked when I heard that.
Yeah, it seems to make all kinds of sense, right? I mean, Pittsburgh, it just makes sense for him to be there. Then, do you think Flores will ever be a head coach again? And, well, I'll let you answer that first.
Well, part of it will depend, I think, on the lawsuit from there and how that goes. I don't know. Right now, is he set up to be the next Steelers coach?
That's what I was going to get to.
There's been talk about that. It seems like this would be a natural, transition there from that. Again, we don't know when Pittsburgh's that coach will be ready to move on, but we've thought it may be coming here in the near future. So, again, it depends, again, how the lawsuit goes. It depends how he handles it. He may just really continue to push with, hey, I need to get a head coaching job again. And, I don't know.
Yeah, I wondered even if Tomlin, maybe his seat's a little hotter now. You would think transitioning away from Ben Roethlisberger, and they came out this week, by the way, and said they're confident in Mason Rudolph. That's not true. But Tomlin, I wonder now if they would go, hey, if he doesn't perform well, maybe next year's kind of a wash. Whatever happens. But then if he goes 2 years, and struggles, maybe then Flores is the option there. And they don't move on from coaches very often in Pittsburgh, where they've had 3, I think, in their entire history. So they're not going to move on from Tomlin easily there. Of course, Jimmy Garoppolo is a name that's been mentioned to Pittsburgh a lot. But, I mean, seriously, there's a time where you just don't have to say anything. Why would you come out and say, we believe in Mason Rudolph and we're comfortable with him being our opening day starter? There's no way they're comfortable with Mason Rudolph being their starter, are they?
No, they're not. But I mean, there's a history of that. So, I remember when they used to joke about Jerry Jones at Dallas, telling the coach, "Hey, so Quincy Carter's the man. Let me say it like you mean it," and that type of thing. So, I can't believe they would say that or would believe that necessarily. And we may see that get contradicted at the draft.
Hey, let's play this game. Quincy Carter or Mason Rudolph? Who are you taking?
I don't want either one of them, so I don't
know. Just give the ball to Najee Harris and let him go.
Let him go. That's it.
Yeah, man, it's so crazy. I don't know. The draft's getting fun, Dad. We'll get into our draft coverage. We're going to wait till after free agency to get into our draft coverage. But I've already started doing some research and preparing for that. Last year, you and I both had a pretty good first round draft, mock draft, where we were as good. Actually, we were better than most of the national guys. But working on that, those quarterbacks are starting to get the hype again. We just a couple weeks ago, the thing was, well, there's really not any quarterback that can change your program. And now you're talking about 5 quarterbacks going in the first round. People are starting to get excited about Malik Willis from Liberty. The Pitt quarterback, he's hit or miss, depending on who you listen to. And the Sam Howell from North Carolina, hit or miss, depending on who you listen to. The Cincinnati kid. There's all kinds of options out there. I'm starting to get really excited about the draft, but we got to see that free agency to kind of figure out the team needs. Green Bay, Dad, we're Packer fans, so I think everybody listening to this knows this, but they're going to start getting into those salary issues here pretty soon. As soon as they make it official that Rodgers is coming back, I think he's coming back at least. As of this recording, we don't know the answer yet, but. Do you think after his 12-day cleanse, his mind is right and he's ready to come back next year?
I hope so. But, it'll be interesting. I think everything's pointing toward that, no doubt about it. And, of course, the Packers have already started making a few moves, clearing some cap space. I was reading a little bit today from Gutekunst's press conference. They definitely have a plan. They have obviously several plans depending on how things go with Rodgers, but I think they're very sincere in trying not to lose a lot of the key players. And again, if they can restructure these contracts, the one they did with Kenny Clark, they cleared $10 million. I mean, that's fair. That was fairly significant. So, a few more of those. Which is what they will have in mind. Again, last year there was a lot of talk about, restructuring these things, and boy, they're just pushing it off and running a risk. But I've read where they think that in a couple of years the salary cap will go up quite a bit. So you never know, but definitely they're gonna head that way. A team like the Packers that have players where they really have the potential to make a run at it, are going to do what they can to have a good team again next year.
Yeah, Andrew Brandt, who was in the Packers organization when Rodgers got drafted, was doing contracts. He's got some really interesting stuff. He's got a podcast about sports business and other things as well. But he said on Twitter, the thing that he's learned about being in football is that the teams, they don't worry near as much as the fans and the media do about the salary cap situation. The teams always have a plan. They know they can work out whatever they need to work out. They don't fret about it. They're not worried about it. They're going to get it figured out. So that being said, it'll all happen. They are going to lose some guys. They're going to have to cut some guys. Even if Rodgers retires or gets traded, they're still going to lose some guys. We saw Zadarius Smith. He deleted all his Packer pictures on Instagram, which I am so fed up with that nonsense. But nonetheless, they're going to lose some guys, but it's okay. Like I said, I think Rodgers is back, and maybe by the time people listen to this, we already have an answer. I don't think we'll have an answer by the release of this episode, but nonetheless, we will see. Speaking of football, Dad, the USFL had their draft this week. I know we talked about this before we came on air. There weren't a lot of things that stuck out to you on there. I want to talk about a couple of these players, though. Quarterbacks that got drafted, amongst others. Shea Patterson goes number 1. He was, of course, at Michigan. He got drafted by Michigan. He was an interesting college quarterback. Never, to me, ever looked like he could be a legit NFL quarterback. Yet he's going to be he was the number 1 overall pick for the USFL, and it makes sense with the region going to Detroit. Even though they're not playing in Michigan, they're playing in Alabama. But Jordan Ta'amu. Now I'm saying his name wrong, but he was the star, one of the stars of the XFL. The last time the XFL came around, he was on the Chiefs for a little bit this year. He played great in the XFL. He's going to get another opportunity in the USFL to show that he can be a legit quarterback. Paxton Lynch, the former first-round draft pick, he's the second quarterback selected by his team, so he's probably not the starter, and he's a little older now than he was back in the day, but Paxton Lynch may get another shot. Kyle Aletta was with the Giants, gets there as well. So some interesting quarterback names out there. Do you think legitimately a quarterback in the USFL is really going to bolster his career, or do you think the USFL could lead to a backup job somewhere?
I think it's more likely it would lead to a backup job. I mean, unless a guy just really dominates. I think there are some positions, it's more on the defense that'll have a chance to really make a name for themselves. I think we're talking about edge rushers. You're talking about cover guys, cornerbacks, things like that. I think some of those guys can definitely help themselves and get a shot. Wide receiver, more than likely. Offensive linemen will get a little more chance to show their ability. But quarterbacks, I think, there may be one or two that really shine, but I think getting a good backup job would be probably what they'd get.
The position that probably has the best chance of going from USFL to NFL is special teams, kicker, punter, where they can come out. I mean, a kicker can just, be perfect. And NFL teams are always looking for kickers. And same is true with punters. Austin Mcginnis, former Kentucky kicker, and actually has had a time in the NFL. He's been a solid kicker, but he's going to play for, I think, New Orleans and get an opportunity. A couple other names that stuck out to me. Scooby Wright, he was a name at Arizona when he played there in college and has been unable to really stick in the NFL, so he gets drafted. He's in the USFL. Wide receivers, 3 names. Jeff Bedet, a lot of people remember him from Oklahoma. Again, he's just not been able to make it in the NFL, so he's in the USFL now. Jamon Moore, 4th-round draft pick for Green Bay back in 2018. There was the GM, Ted Thompson, at the time, was high on him. They eventually had to cut him. He just never made it. He could not catch footballs. And if you're an NFL wide receiver, you kind of got to catch footballs. Jamon Moore didn't make it. And then John Franklin III, who was on Last Chance U on Netflix, Florida State, Florida Atlantic, I believe, as well. And he's going to have another opportunity in the USFL as well. Dad, I was hoping for a few more splashier names, guys that maybe were a little bit more household names. Not a ton of them in the league, but I still think the football is going to be pretty decent once they kick off in April. Do you have high expectations, low expectations, no expectations for the USFL?
I really don't know. I think it'll depend on how well. If they can come out and there can be competitive games and it'd be good football, then I think there's a chance, because in spring you like to see football. I remember last year, we had some of the colleges who didn't play in the fall played in the spring, and I don't think I watched any of those games. Didn't have a lot of interest, but these are guys that may have a chance to play. I think the teams they have, the logos they have. I think a lot of people like myself will, watch the first couple of weeks and see kind of how it goes from there. We'll see. I don't think it'll generate totally the kind of interest, obviously, that big time college football or the NFL has. But it may work. You've got the TV backing of it. You'll have promotion of it. And it looks like you have pretty good coaching. So if you have good teams and they play well and it's competitive, then I think there's a good chance. It'll just be interesting to see, because had a lot of these spring leagues and they really haven't worked yet. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think they've set it up right. How they do the broadcasts will be intriguing to watch. They can be super informative. The XFL did good with that the last time they did it, with how they did their during the game interviews and stuff like that. They had better access. And if the TV network owns the league, you would think the access would be pretty good. So I'd be interested to see how they do that with the broadcast. They got the right people involved, from officiating to broadcast to coaching to players. Everything around should be pretty good. And they're not trying to compete with anybody at this point. They eventually will compete with the XFL, but at the moment, they're not trying to compete with anybody. And that's, I think, a positive thing all the way around, especially if baseball's still in a lockout come opening day for the USFL. Another thing, Dad, we didn't talk about this pre-show. The XFL announced they're going to basically be the testing grounds for the NFL. They worked a deal with the NFL where if the NFL wants to try out a rule, the XFL will do it. If they want to try out technology, the XFL will do it. And smart move there by the XFL to be the testing ground for the NFL. And that's the kind of thing I think you have to do to succeed, especially with the USFL now in effect as well. XFL coming next year. They got Dwayne Johnson. They've got some eyes, and depending on what the USFL does, that could really help the XFL, I think, launching next year as well. So, that seems like a smart move, I would say.
Yes, it is. Anything they can do to connect themselves with the NFL will help. Again, if they are trying new rules, then as an NFL fan, I'd be more interested in watching. Hey, how does this work? How's this technology work? How's it developing from there? I remember the original XFL, wasn't that where the overhead camera came in? Yeah. And that's been something that worked there. And so I don't think gimmicks will be as good a deal as connection with the NFL. And if the NFL is kind of looking at it, then the more they take it seriously, the more fans will take it seriously.
Good point. All right, let's wrap up our episode talking about NASCAR. I said it on Monday, Dad. NASCAR has pulled me back in. I watched pretty much the entire race on Sunday, the Daytona 500. And yes, it's a historic race. Yes, it's a big deal. It's maybe more exciting than some other races. But I really enjoyed myself Sunday. My kids, not so much, but me, I enjoyed watching the race on Sunday. Did you watch the Daytona 500?
I did, and I watched almost all of it. It was interesting. Part of that was because, the guest we had on last week, he was really good. I had a little more information about what was going on. I understood a little more about the segments and that. And again, it was good. I think they have really good announcers that keep your interest there. I thought the announcers were good. They didn't overpower the race, but yet they gave, having Tony Stewart on there and that gave some insight, and with him and Boyer went well. But again, they let the race kind of run. I thought they did a good job, showing the race from there. Of course, Daytona is always exciting. We shouldn't like to see wrecks, but you're always going to have that at Daytona. And that did not, disappoint in this one either. But knowing a little more from hearing our guests, knowing about the new cars, watching that a little bit. And again, Daytona's a little different because of the draft, but it seems like there were more people stayed in it, not just the big names. And of course, the Rex took some of them out.
Yeah, Matt Beamer came on from Ramblin' on Racing podcast and gave us a lot of good information last week. You're right. Now, when I looked at it from the last time I followed racing to now, the guys that I kind of cheered for, they're not around anymore. So I had to pick new drivers. Chase Briscoe, who I've been working hard since last year to get on the program, hasn't worked out yet. But Chase Briscoe and Harrison Burton are the two guys that I picked to follow this year, 2 Ford drivers. Chase Briscoe is an outspoken Christian, which is one of the reasons I chose him as well. And then Burton with his history and listening to the podcast of the Burton. Burton flips early on. He was out of the race early. Chase Briscoe was in it at the end. Did you have to find a new racer to cheer for, or how did you decide what you were going to look for in this race?
I was really just watching. I think as a few weeks go along, I'll be able to connect more because, like you said, most of the racers that I knew and I followed are not there anymore, and some of the
broadcasters now.
Huh?
They're broadcasters now.
Yes, they are. And actually, they've made a great transition. They do real well with that. It's funny how players or how guys in all sports, but like drivers, guys I didn't like at all at drivers. I like them as broadcasters. They're doing well. I was never a Jeff Gordon fan, but, I think he does well and ones like that. And again, they've done a good job of educating folks, not just old hardcore race fans, but trying to attract new ones. And I think these younger guys, I'm always real intrigued by the guys whose dads raced or granddads raced. And there are several of them in there now doing real well. It looks like, and we'll see, again, we talked, with our expert the other day, and there are a lot of road races again. I actually enjoy watching that style to some extent too. But again, we'll see how it goes. But I think it was definitely off to a good start, and I'm interested in following it a little more.
Yeah, I'm a short track guy. I like the short tracks, especially Bristol. But nonetheless, the ending was a little controversial. The winner, Cindric, at the very end, he tried to block his teammate, ended up wrecking his teammate, still getting the win, and holding off the guys chasing him down. I've heard a lot of talking about this. Should have Cindric tried to block his teammate, or should he have just tried to drag race him to the line?
I think when it comes down, you have to try to win. And as long as it's not, totally malicious or dirty type thing, then I think you have to be competitive, even with a guy on your team. From there, I think early on people help teammates, and that makes a lot of sense. But when it's always been, it comes down to the last lap. Everybody's trying to win. And I think you're right. He was trying to block him. I don't think he was trying to wreck him necessarily. Now, sometimes people will get into that and they make a mistake. Then it's kind of tough to defend. But, in this case, he was trying to win, and I think it was okay.
Not only was he trying to win, he did win. Had he lost, then that would have been an issue. Had Bubba Wallace caught him, then it would have been, should have went down and blocked Bubba and not worried about me. But at the end of the day, they won. The owner was happy. He got a winning car, and the rookie winning the Daytona 500 as well. Now they go from Florida to California, Fontana this weekend. I'll be tuning in as much as possible to that one as well. Of course, I'll be spending my Saturday in Richmond, Kentucky at EKU as they have their final home game of the season, regular season finale Saturday, men's and women's doubleheader. So I'll be there covering that as well. You know what, Dad? I'm thinking maybe I can get us some media passes to Kentucky Speedway this year for the race. And maybe you can come down. We can go spend some time at the Kentucky Speedway. I don't know. We'll see. Just thinking out loud. Okay. All right. Anything else you want to talk about before we close up the episode today?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of stuff. And like I said, college basketball is going to be heating up here pretty quick, and a lot of March Madness, as well as, like I said, the NFL free agency, getting ready for the draft. The combine's coming up here maybe this week or pretty close. So be a lot of talk there. It'll be interesting.
Combine, now that you say that, Dad, there's a lot of talk about the agents are going to hold their players out of workouts because they're not allowing the players, trainers and things like that in because of COVID stuff. And so they're still going to do the interviews and do the medical tests. But a lot of the agents are suggesting that their players not go through any of the workout stuff because they're not allowed to have their people with them and tell them to wait till pro day. Do you think that the combine will cave on this so they have the guys working out, or do you think they're going to hold their ground and put these guys in a bubble?
I thought they had already changed that. Maybe not. Maybe I just heard the talk that they wanted them to, but it sounded like the combine already did, relax some of the stipulations there, and was going to help because otherwise people were going to boycott it and not come. So I know they've made. I'm pretty sure I've read where they have made some changes already to relax it. Whether it's enough or not, I don't know. But I think the combine wants to keep all the good players there and keep everything, the way it is. What I read or what I heard was, this is by far the best collection of talent in one spot, and they need to make it work.
Yeah, well, maybe they did. I didn't see that, but there's a possibility they have worked that out. If they did, great. If they didn't, what do I care? I don't think the combine does a whole lot, at least the 40. I don't think the workouts do a whole lot. I know the interviews are very effective and are big decision-making tools that they use for the draft as well. But like I said, once the free agency kind of opens up, we'll start working towards our draft coverage, and we'll break down each team and draft needs and everything there. Baseball, hopefully we've got a solution from them pretty soon. That's something that could break before this episode airs, between the time we've recorded and the time the episode airs. Hopefully not for the sake of our podcast, but that should be coming up pretty soon as well. I want to remind everybody you can follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove. You get the Sports Stove podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch us on TV as well. We're on BellyUp.tv, the Belly Up Sports TV network on the Roku or Tiki Live app on any other streaming television as well. Catch us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. on TV, or again, anywhere you get your podcast as well. We'll be back with a new episode Monday morning. Don't forget to tune in to Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Live Sunday night at 8 p.m. on Belly Up Fantasy's Twitter, Facebook pages, as well as Tiki Live and Belly Up Sports TV. And we'll give you a portion of that program on our Monday episode as well. At least that is the plan. All right. Good show today, Dad. You're doing great. Improving every day. No, I'm just kidding. We appreciate the feedback that we hear. A lot of you have given us feedback that you enjoy these episodes with me and Dad, and we have a good time talking sports with you all as well. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Sports Stove Podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the sports.